The sky stretched endlessly above as she walked through the remains of a village that had long lost its name. Buildings reduced to dust and ash bodies strewn across the land, whispers of the past carried on the wind. She did not remember much before the war, only fragments of a life long gone, an orphan raised by strangers, molded into a soldier hardened by the world. She carried no name, only a number etched into her uniform and a purpose that drove her forward each battle she fought. Blurred into the next, until the day she saw him standing across the battlefield. She had always been quick to recognize faces of enemies and allies alike, but this man was different. His presence struck something deep within her like an echo of a memory she could not reach. His eyes carried a sorrow that felt unspoken, a pain she had never seen before. He moved with a purpose, one that matched her own, and when the battle erupted around them, she found herself facing him, their weapons raised, yet neither willing to strike, as if some unseen force held them back. As the battlefield roared, with the cries of the wounded and the clash of steel against steel, she felt a strange hesitation. She had never faltered before, never questioned her orders, yet this man before her made her pause, as if fate had placed them together for a reason. He stared at her, his lips parting as if to say something, but the words were lost to the chaos around them. A sudden explosion threw them apart, and when the dust settled, he was gone, leaving her with a sense of loss she did not understand. That night she sat by the dim glow of a fire, her mind replaying the battle over and over again, trying to make sense of the unease in her heart. Something about that man felt familiar, but she could not grasp why. She had never known her parents, never known where she came from. Her past was a void she had learned to ignore, yet the moment she looked into his eyes, she felt as if she had found a piece of herself she did not know was missing. The next battle came swiftly, leaving little time for thought, yet even as she fought, her mind kept drifting back to the man. In the chaos she searched for him, hoping to see him again, to understand why she felt drawn to him, and when she finally caught sight of him among the enemy lines, her heart pounded in a way it never had before. He was wounded, struggling to stand, yet his gaze remained locked on her, and for the first time in her life she hesitated. She moved through the battle, ignoring the orders ringing in her ear. Something told her she had to reach him, she had to know who he was before it was too late. Cutting through enemies as if they were mere shadows, she reached him, falling to her knees at his side. His breathing was ragged, his body broken, yet he still found the strength to lift his hand and touch her face, his voice weak yet filled with something she had never known before, love. His words came slowly, as if speaking them took all the strength he had left. He called her by a name she did not know, a name she had never heard before, yet something deep inside her recognized it. He spoke of a daughter lost to war, a child taken before her first memories. And as the words settled into her mind, the world around her shattered. The truth was there, undeniable. She was not just another soldier, she was his daughter. Tears blurred her vision as she took his hand. The battle still raged around them, but in that moment none of it mattered. She had spent her whole life fighting, believing she was alone, believing she had no past, no family. And yet here, he was her father, the man she had unknowingly been searching for all along. But fate was cruel. The wounds he bore were too severe, and as she pleaded with him to hold on, he only smiled, pressing something into her hand, a pendant old and worn, the last piece of her past he could give her. He was gone before she could say all the things she never knew she needed to say. Before she could tell him she understood, before she could ask him to stay. And as she knelt there clutching the pendant that once belonged to the father she never knew, she felt a pain deeper than any wound she had ever suffered. The war had taken much from her, but this was the first time it had taken something she had only just found, something irreplaceable. The war did not end that day, nor did her fight, but something within her changed. She no longer fought for orders or for duty, she fought for him, for the father who had given everything to save the daughter he had never stopped searching for. She carried his memory with her in every battle, in every moment of silence. She had found her past in the middle of war, and though it had been cruel, it had given her one final gift, the knowledge that she was never truly alone. The days turned to weeks, and the battles never ceased, but her heart no longer belonged to war. She still fought, but not for the reasons she once had. She fought to protect, to shield others from suffering the way she had. She fought because her father had given his last breath to ensure she lived not just to survive, but to find meaning in the life he had. Returned to her, the pendant never left her side, a constant reminder of where she came from and who she was meant to be. The war that had consumed her world was nearing its end. The final battle loomed like a storm waiting to break. She stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking out at what would soon become another memory, another scar etched into history. She had spent her life as a soldier, but now she saw beyond the fighting, beyond the bloodshed. She saw hope for a world that did not have to be lost to war. She would make sure of it. She would fight not to destroy, but to build something new. The war ended not with glory, but with silence. The battlefield emptied, the guns fell quiet, and as the dust settled, she stood among the ruins of what had been her past and the foundation of her future. Her father's sacrifice had given her more than just survival. He had given her a purpose beyond the war, beyond the pain. She was more than just a soldier now. She was a daughter who carried the love of a man who had never stopped looking for her, a love that would guide her for the rest of her days.